nobody in the barn could start the 1948 tractor. Not the young mechanic with the new battery. Not the farmhand who had cleaned the carburetor twice. Not the auction man who said, "That old thing is finished." They had cranked it until the starter groaned. They had checked the plugs, tapped the lines, and argued over whether the whole machine was worth saving. Then Walter Briggs walked in, 71 years old. Faded overalls, wire-rimmed glasses, hands rough enough to look like they had been carved from fence posts. He did not ask for a wrench. He did not open the hood first. He bent down beside the old red tractor, placed one hand against the metal, and leaned his ear close to the engine. One of the younger men laughed. "You think it's gonna whisper the problem to you?" Walter did not look back. He listened. And within 10 seconds he heard the one thing nobody else had noticed. The tractor had not failed because it was dead. It had failed because everyone in that barn had forgotten how an old machine was supposed to speak. The tractor belonged to Eli Carter's family, or at least it had. By Saturday morning, it was sitting in the back corner of Mason's auction barn with a paper tag wired to the steering column and a grease pencil number marked across the windshield frame. Lot 38. The auctioneer had called it a non-running 1948 tractor. Red, unknown condition. But to Eli, it was not Lot 38. It was his grandfather's tractor. It was the machine he remembered from summer mornings, back when he was small enough to sit on the fender while his grandfather eased across the lower field. It had pulled hay wagons, dragged storm-fallen limbs from the pasture, and sat under the shed every winter with an old coffee can over the exhaust pipe. His grandfather used to say, "A machine like this will outlast a man if the man has patience." After the funeral, Eli's mother agreed to sell a few things from the farm. The tractor was supposed to go too, but then it would not start. And in an auction barn, a tractor that would not start became scrap before the bidding even began. By 9 o'clock, 2 men had already tried. First came Travis, the youngest mechanic in town, wearing a clean shop shirt with his name stitched over the pocket. He brought a jump pack, a socket set, and the confidence of someone who believed every old problem could be solved with a new part. He clipped the cables, climbed onto the seat, and hit the starter. The tractor turned over slowly. Whir, whir, whir. Nothing. Then came Roy, who worked part-time at the feed mill and claimed he had started every stubborn engine in 3 counties. He pumped the throttle, pulled the choke too far, and got the old tractor coughing gasoline fumes instead of fire. "Carburetor's junk," Roy said. Travis disagreed. "Spark issue." Dale Mason, the auctioneer's nephew, wiped his hands on a rag. "Doesn't matter what it is. Nobody's going to pay good money for a dead tractor." Eli stood beside the rear tire, quiet, one hand resting on the worn tread. His mother stood near the doorway, coat folded over her arm. She had already told him the night before, "Your grandfather would rather we keep the farm than keep the tractor." Maybe that was true, but Eli knew his grandfather would have hated seeing men laugh at it. By 10 o'clock, a few farmers had stopped to watch. Men leaned in and repeated the same things men always repeated around a dead engine. "Needs points." "Bad coil." "Compression's probably gone." "Should have sold it 5 years ago." Every sentence made Eli's jaw tighten. Then Dale looked over the sheet again and shook his head. "If it won't start before noon, we move it as salvage." His mother closed her eyes for half a second. And just then, Walter Briggs stepped into the barn. He hadn't come for the auction. Walter rarely came to public sales anymore. He said there was too much talking and not enough listening. He lived 6 miles outside town on a place that had more fence than livestock and more memories than money. He had known Eli's grandfather. That was why he came. He walked slowly, Not because he was weak, but because he had long ago stopped believing hurry improved anything. Dale saw him first. "Well, here comes the museum." A few men chuckled. Walter ignored them. He looked at the tractor, not the tag, not the bidding sheet, the tractor. Then he looked at Eli. "This your granddad's?" Eli nodded. "Yes, sir." Walter stepped closer and ran his fingers along the red paint near the hood seam. The paint was faded and chipped, but beneath the dust, the tractor still had dignity. "Your granddad kept this one clean," Walter said. He tried to. Walter nodded once, as if that mattered. Travis spoke from behind the open hood. "We've already been through it. Battery's good enough. Plugs are decent. Carb's getting fuel. It turns over, but it won't catch." Walter did not answer. Roy folded his arms. "Maybe you can pray over it." Dale smiled. "Or tell it stories from the war." The men laughed again. Walter leaned closer to the engine. He placed his hand against the side of the tractor and turned his head slightly. "Crank it once," he said. Travis blinked. "We already did." Once more. Travis climbed into the seat as if humoring an old man. Walter lifted one finger. "No pumping. No choke. Just turn it." The barn quieted. Travis pressed the starter. The old tractor groaned. "Whir, whir, whir." The fan moved. The belt dragged. The engine rolled over and refused. Walter's eyes narrowed. "Again," he said. Travis tried again. "Whir, whir." Walter raised his hand. "Stop." The silence after the starter cutoff felt heavier than the cranking. Walter stayed bent close to the engine. Then he asked softly, "Where's the snap?" Nobody answered. Travis frowned. "What snap?" Walter straightened slowly. "The impulse snap." The younger mechanic stared back like Walter had named a ghost. Walter pointed toward the magneto. "That tractor's not asking for half the things you boys are giving it. It's asking for the one thing you're not listening for." Roy scoffed. "It's getting spark." Walter turned to him. "Maybe. But not the way it needs it." A few men stopped smiling. Someone near the back stepped closer. Eli looked at the tractor, then at Walter. "What does that mean?" Walter took off his glasses and wiped them with the edge of his shirt. "It means your granddad's tractor might not be dead. It might just be waiting for somebody who remembers how to start it. If you have ever seen an old farmer solve something everyone else gave up on, stay with this story, because Walter Briggs was about to show them that some machines do not reveal their secrets to the fastest hands in the room. They reveal them to the person patient enough to hear what is missing. Walter asked for a small wrench, a clean rag, and silence. Travis handed him the wrench. Roy muttered, "Silence won't fix a dead engine." Walter said, "No, but noise hides the truth." He opened the magneto cover carefully, like a man opening an old letter. Inside were years of dust, light corrosion, and the kind of neglect that does not happen all at once. Walter checked the points. He checked the rotor. Then he touched the impulse coupling with 2 fingers and rocked it gently. He stopped. There was a tiny shift in his expression. Recognition. He had found something he already suspected. Travis leaned in. "What?" Walter worked the mechanism by hand. Nothing. He worked it again. A dull little click came from inside the magneto. Walter shook his head. "That's not a snap. That's a tired hinge." The men around him went quiet. Walter looked toward Eli. "Did your granddad ever tell you how this tractor liked to be started?" Eli shook his head. "I was too young. I just remember he always listened before he touched anything." Walter smiled faintly. "That sounds like him." Eli's mother stepped closer from the doorway. "He used to say every tractor had a mood." Walter nodded. "Not a mood, a sequence. He pointed to the magneto. On these old systems, you can't treat them like a modern engine. The impulse spring wins, then snaps. That snap gives you a hotter spark when the engine is turning slow. Travis looked down at the part. So if it doesn't snap, it cranks, Walter said, but it won't truly start. You can pour fuel, change plugs, argue all morning, and still miss the thing it needed first. Roy looked away. Walter didn't make him smaller. He cleaned the contact surfaces, freed the sticky impulse, and worked the mechanism again. This time, there was a sharper sound. Click. Not loud, but clean. Walter listened. Then he shook his head. Closer. Dale Mason checked his watch. We've got a sale to run. Walter looked at him. Then sell something else first. Dale laughed. You running my auction now? Walter's eyes did not move. No, I'm giving this boy's grandfather 10 more minutes. That ended the laughter. Eli looked down. His mother pressed her lips together and turned slightly away, but not before Eli saw her eyes shine. Walter returned to the machine. The tractor that had been dismissed as dead was suddenly a question, and questions hold people longer than answers. Walter asked Travis to bring the crank handle from the tool tray near the fender. Travis hesitated. You're not hand cranking it. Walter took the crank from him, not to start, to listen. He fitted it carefully, keeping his thumb tucked the old way. He turned the engine slowly. Once, twice. Then the sound came. Snap. A small, sharp report from the magneto. Walter froze. There, he said. Eli barely breathed. That's it. Walter nodded. That's what was missing. Travis stepped closer, all pride gone now. How did you know? Walter glanced at him. Because I spent 50 years listening to tractors before I had money to replace parts. That sentence settled over the room. He adjusted the impulse carefully, not with drama, not with a speech, but with the patient precision of a man whose hands remembered more than his mouth wanted to explain. Then he stepped back. Now, Walter said, we stop treating it like it's stubborn and start treating it like it's old. Stories like this are why old farm knowledge deserves to be remembered. So if you value that kind of wisdom, subscribe before it disappears. Walter climbed onto the tractor seat. He did not look natural there in the way young men look natural on machinery, all movement and force. He looked like he belonged because he did less. He set the throttle low, not closed, not open too far, just enough. He touched the choke only briefly, then eased it back. Then he paused, his head tilted. The barn went quiet. Walter looked down at the steering wheel, worn smooth by Eli's grandfather's hands. Ben Carter always started this one with patience, he said. Eli swallowed hard. That was my grandfather. I know. Walter pressed the starter. The tractor turned over. Brr. Then came the snap. Clean, sharp, alive. The engine coughed. Every man in the barn leaned forward. Walter did not pump the throttle. He waited. The tractor rolled again. Whir, snap, cough. Then it almost caught. A rough half-second of life shook through the exhaust, then died. Roy slapped his hand against his thigh. There it is. Walter raised one finger. Not yet. He waited again. That was the forgotten trick. Not one magic lever hidden under the seat. Not some miracle. It was knowing that the snap mattered more than the cranking. It was knowing that old engines punish panic. Walter adjusted the choke a hair. Only a hair. Then he tried again. The starter rolled. Whir. Snap. The tractor coughed once, then twice. Then a deep, uneven rumble rose from somewhere inside the red metal. The exhaust barked. The hood trembled. The belt jumped. And suddenly, after all the laughing, all the guessing, all the talk of salvage, the 1948 tractor came alive. The sound filled the barn like a witness, not smooth at first, not pretty, but alive. Travis stared at the engine with his mouth slightly open. Roy took his cap off. Dale Mason looked down at his auction sheet and scratched a line through the word non-running. Eli did not move. He just stood by the rear tire with one hand over his mouth. His mother began to cry. Walter let the tractor idle until he knew it would hold. Then he eased the throttle slightly and the old tractor settled into a steadier rhythm. Pop, 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 pop. The same rhythm Eli remembered from childhood. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to bring back mornings he thought were gone. Enough to turn scrap back into inheritance. Walter climbed down slowly. Travis stepped toward him. I would have replaced the coil. Walter nodded. Maybe it needs one someday. Roy said quieter. I flooded it. Walter looked at him. You were, trying to make it start. Roy nodded once, grateful for the mercy inside that sentence. Dale Mason walked over, suddenly more respectful now that the tractor had a voice again. I suppose we'll sell it as running. Eli's mother wiped her face. No. Everyone turned. She looked at Eli, then at the tractor, then at Walter. We're not selling it. Dale blinked. That tractor is on the list. Eli's mother straightened. Then take it off. Eli looked at her. Mom, I know, she said, but your grandfather was right. Some things don't cost money until you lose them. The barn was quiet again, but this time it was not doubt. It was respect. Dale sighed. I'll need the paperwork changed, Walter said. Paperwork's easier than regret. No one argued with that. And before Walter touched the starter one last time, everyone in that barn finally understood why some lessons cannot be learned from a manual. A manual can tell you where the magneto sits. It can tell you how to set timing. It can tell you the gap and the proper procedure. But it cannot teach you the sound of something missing. That has to be handed down. Later that afternoon, after the auction had moved on to wagons, discs, and hay rakes, Eli found Walter outside near the fence line. The old farmer was wiping his hands with the same rag. Eli stood beside him. I don't know how to thank you. Walter looked toward the barn. Keep it inside. Don't pump the throttle like you're mad at it. And every few weeks start it just to remind it it's still wanted. Eli smiled a little. I meant for saving it. Walter's face softened. I didn't save it. Eli frowned. You did. Walter shook his head. Your grandfather saved it years ago by taking care of it. I just remembered how he would have listened. For a moment, Eli could not speak. Then he asked the question that had been sitting in his chest all day. Can you teach me? Walter looked at him over the top of his glasses. To start that tractor? To hear it. The old farmer was quiet. Then he folded the rag and placed it in his back pocket. Be at my place Tuesday morning, he said. Cold engines tell the truth better. Eli nodded. I'll be there. Walter started to walk away, then stopped. And bring coffee. Not that sweet kind your generation drinks. For the first time all day, Eli laughed. Back inside the barn, the 1948 tractor still idled gently, surrounded by men who had stopped calling it dead. Travis leaned near the engine now, not pretending to know, but listening. Roy stood beside him. Neither spoke. By evening, word had already moved through town. The dead tractor started. Walter Briggs heard what the mechanics missed. Eli Carter kept his grandfather's machine. But people always simplify stories after they happen. They turn patience into a trick and wisdom into luck. The truth was better than that. Nobody could start the 1948 tractor. Not because they were foolish, not because they did not try, but because they were listening for the wrong thing. Walter Briggs knew the forgotten trick. Slow down, respect the spark, wait for the snap, and listen before you decide something is dead. He did not fix it in 10 seconds. He heard it in 10 seconds. The fixing took tools. The hearing took years. If this story reminded you of someone who could fix things by listening first, subscribe for more old farm stories where patience, memory, and hard-earned wisdom still matter.